Great. Hey guys, it's Tay with the D3 Diaries back here with another podcast episode. Today we have a very, very big guest. We are joined by Morgan Ryan, who was one of the top liberos in the 2025 season. So, Morgan, why don't you introduce yourself and give you a little bit about a history of your volleyball history, I should say.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Morgan. I'm from Minnesota. I've been playing volleyball ever since I was like early elementary. It's always been a part of my life. And it was never a question of if I wanted to play in college, it was always a when. And I'm so happy that I found St. Olaf.
I mean, St. Olaf obviously has been being there has been able to shown a lot of like the ability you have as a player, as an athlete. But you've had massive jumps from all 4 years of being there, from DSing to getting that starting libero role. But for people who know my page and might not be up to date in college volleyball, you had probably one of the best years out of a libero we've ever seen, reaching the 800 dig mark, which is something that like you just don't think of. Like it's like someone hitting like 700 kills. You don't think of those numbers. So as an athlete, getting to that milestone, and obviously there's a lot of work that goes into it. What are some of the things you did when I should say, when you first got that starting libero role, even from like 2023 to 2025, that like positively impacted you in a way that got you to the point where you are reaching that high end achievement?
Yeah, so I would say something that I've been very consistent about, especially throughout college, is trying to find more ways to put in more work essentially, whether that's through extra reps, to like hyper analyzing everything with like coaches, or just wanting to play more volleyball all the time. I think those have been truly consistent and it pays off every day, I would say.
And I mean, you seem to be like an absolute joy on the court. Just the photos you see on like the Instagram pages, watching the videos, especially watching the tournament, that Illinois Wesleyan game that me and my buddies tuned into. But looking at it from an outside perspective, as a libero, why is it so important to have that kind of energy that you bring to the court, especially a libero of your stature who's gonna give you at least 15 digs a game, and being able to lock in on that mindset of I have to play amazing defense, but also I have to keep the energy high and being able to balance that out because I feel like that's a struggle that many young athletes face where they go one way but they don't go the other. So how do you manage to balance that, and what are some steps you've taken to get to that point?
Yeah, so I've always been really big about trying to focus less on myself during games and more on my teammates. And I think that really pays off in the sense of if we're in serve receive, I'm like, okay, I'm checking in with my passers, I'm checking in with my hitters. I've talked about shots, like really going through kind of the mental checklist of is everyone supported? Are we continuously cheering? What's working, what's not? And then just being consistent with that throughout the game.
I mean, that's really wonderful to hear. Having that, I mean, even just having that base connection with your teammates. A lot of younger players, especially when they're starting out, they build these connections and then move up in club and you have to rebuild these connections. So being able to click with a team so fast is so important in this game. And obviously, you guys did that quite well this season, with a lot of stunning wins. Three ranked wins over the season. Milliken was the first one, and then obviously the big one was one of the biggest upsets of the year with your win over Whitewater, and not just a win, a pretty dominating sweep that I myself did not see coming. So props to you guys on that. But going into that game, obviously being the underdogs, how did that team connection that you mentioned, especially on the court, help you push you guys over the edge to beat a team like Whitewater, even to go further than that, taking so many good teams to five, like for example, Laverne at the beginning of the season, who ended up being the national runner-ups and having the national player of the year in Maya Ray. So I was just wondering how, like, as a team, did you guys enter that game, especially with your coaches backing you, and how did you push through, especially that Whitewater game, to get you guys over the edge?
Yeah, I think if there's one thing about St. Olaf that you would probably hear repeatedly from me, it's that we play for each other, like through and through. And we really wanted to go into that game with the same mentality of we're just going to focus on our side. We're going to play our volleyball. We're going to keep our normal energy, normal cheers, and really just focus on us, focus on our side, you know? And whatever happens on their side, like we're not in control of. So let's just do everything we can in our power to be successful.
I mean, and success is something you guys found this year, dominating pretty much the entire season, with a few speed bumps in there. Obviously, you guys played a very tough schedule to say the least. Very tough teams. I mean, it's not often you see a team play like Eau Claire, Whitewater, Laverne, Illinois Wesleyan, who I actually had winning the whole tournament, like all in the same few months. So that competitiveness, how has that helped you guys grow as a team? Because obviously you can have players that are really, really good, but that might not play as high level of competition, so they kind of stay at that level. How, on both a skill and mentality level, did playing these top 25 teams, regardless of win or loss, like help you guys grow as a team, both mentally and like as athletes?
I think especially when you do play against ranked opponents and other like high energy, super competitive teams like that, it's super important to just like keep the same mentality almost, like we have a chance here to show them what we can do and also to hopefully elevate our game, play on their level. It's not so much of a, oh wow, we have this super steep slope of skill that we're going to have to branch, but it's how can we play our best volleyball and really show them like we're here to compete?
Compete you guys did, especially against Illinois Wesleyan. Obviously not the result you wanted in that final match, but regardless, it was an incredible match nonetheless. One of probably the best matches of the tournament. And it was at that tournament that you, as mentioned, hit that massive milestone of 800 digs. I guess the age old question is, when you lifted that 800 dig, were you aware that it was your 800 dig? Did you have it in your mind, or were you just like, oh, this is another day, and then afterwards you're like, oh, well, hey, I guess this is a thing now. Like,
Yeah, I think at a certain point in the season, I would say I just stopped looking at my total number of digs. So I wasn't too focused on where the end result was, so much of the question of how can I keep playing volleyball? If I get more digs, this is great, but how can we keep going?
I mean, that's a very humble answer from a very humble player. Uh, but I mean, in general, your career has been one for the ages from a libero. Over 2,000 digs, 150 service aces, over 200 assists. Second all time at St. Olaf and digs, which is crazy to say given your last two seasons, being with such high stature, but kind of giving yourself a little pat on the back. Obviously, incredible season from you statistically, but also accolade wise. Second team All American, first team All Region, back to back Defensive Player of the Years in your conference, plus a first team All Conference. So, how did receiving those awards like push you to want to keep playing? Because I feel like a lot of players, especially like say ones that went in stuff in their junior year, are like, I've already made it to the top. I'm gonna stay at the top. But you seem like a player that seems to want to push further. So looking at your accolades in like say 2024, where you honorable mention All-American, Defensive Player of the Year in your conference, how did that push you to be like, oh, I want to keep pushing myself over the edge? I'm already at the highest point I can be, but I know I can get even higher past that point that I thought was the highest I can be. So like how did those awards last year push you to do what you did this year?
Yeah, I mean, I think it goes along with the mindset of like, I want to be better than I was yesterday. And that goes with those awards and accolades, I suppose. You get them once and you're like, okay, like, I'm going to do my best and we're going to see what can happen this next season, things like that. Instead of trying to focus so much on the accolades themselves, I always have been trying to at least focus on okay, I just want to be better than I was last season, being better than I was last practice, than I was last game.
I wish everyone had that kind of mindset, especially like knowing how many players I've seen that have won pretty much the top of the top accolades, like whether it's high school club, they win nationals, whether it is they win all league, whatever, and they just kind of stop pushing that grind because they're like, oh, I'm already at that point. So to hear someone, especially if your skill, say those words, it really displays the the calmness that you have in your mind. But I'm sure one thing that wasn't calm was when you hit the 2,000 dig mark amongst your teammates, um, which is not an easy feat to do. I don't want anyone saying like, "Oh, 2,000 digs." It's very rare in the sport. So having someone, especially a teammate, hit that mark is something that's incredible to watch. It's something that's incredible to see. How did everyone in the gym react when you when they learned in any sense, whether it was after the match, before, during the match, when it happened, that you hit your 2,000 digs, and how were your teammates and coaches like? How did they support you from that?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's exactly as you said, like everyone is supportive, everyone is encouraging. I mean, there had been some conversation beforehand of, ooh, is this gonna happen? Oh, I don't know. I'm just gonna play, and whatever turns out, turns out. But everyone was very supportive, very encouraging. It was a very good environment to be in.
And I mean, it's a perfect way to cap off your career. And I mean, to think, hey, you hit 2,000, but still gonna get 127 more is something crazy. And I obviously like I said, one of the greatest seasons from a Libero we've ever seen. Not a single game under 10 digs, which is pretty much unthought of, especially at this level where you have hitters like Myre, like Sammy Perlberg, who are just putting balls away left and right. To have someone have every single game be double digit digs and have, I think, 5 games at 30 digs is just, it's amazing to say. And I mean, even just my stupid little awards show it. For those who don't know, Morgan was voted one of our co-liberos of the year. Uh, but kind of going back to like how your teammates celebrate you. Obviously, you've been there 4 years at St. Olaf. You've had many teammates, even through high school club at St. Olaf. But I feel like everyone's got that one teammate where it's just like you had the best time playing with them. Like you're gonna miss playing with them. You're gonna do everything you can to continue playing with them once you graduate and stop playing collegiately. So who for you is that teammate in the sense of, oh my God, like I love this girl, like playing with her 4 years, 2 years, 1 year. It's been the best time of my life. So who for you, who has that like been that teammate that like I guess for lack of a better word, your pepper partner, the one that you're always like, let's go pepper real quick, just on the side. So who's been that for you?
Yes, I would say it's definitely hard to choose just one because you have so many like communities, I suppose, within the team. But I had players like Mesa or Britta, and they would want to go in early and get reps every day with me, which was so fun. So I had them willing to work hard with me, which made it very easy. And then we also have players like Kayla Chun, and she's a setter. She's in my class, probably is my best friend, and there's no one else that I would have rather gotten to experience like the last four with. I have a lot of gratitude for that.
And I mean, to have that connection at Libero setter, regardless of how much playtime each person gets, is incredible. But connection is something that you guys saw a lot of this year. I mean, in my opinion, probably one of the better out of system hitting teams in the nation. Credit to you and your hitters. But how much of that development without a system went into being such a good team out of system? I mean, not that you guys were out of system often, but I feel like that's one of the skills in the game that a lot of teams lack is the out of system game. It's either like, especially like in the men's game, even going beyond the women's game, it's like if you're not in system, you're kind of screwed. But you guys mastered the ability to distribute an offense, both you and your setters. I believe like all of your attackers had right around the same amount of kills per set, which is something you never see. It's always a lot of times it's like, oh, this one person had four, and then it's two, 1.5. But you guys were all of your attackers around the 2.5. So as a libero setting out a system or even putting your team in system, how is that distribution of the ball? Like how is that bonded you as a closer as a team? Because I feel like a lot of teams are like, oh, we're gonna set this one person, and then the scouts like, oh, they're only setting this one person. That was just not the case with you guys. So looking at it, how did that, I guess, on the court connection, how is that impacted by off the court connections, for the lack of better words?
Yeah, of course. I think, I don't know, me and the setters tend to talk about this a lot with like setting out a system and everything too. But it's also communicating with the hitters because I'll be like, I want to give this ball to you if we're in like this situation, yada 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 yada. You have this shot, like let's run this. And it was almost like a little game, I would say, for lack of better words. I mean, you have the trust, and it's like, okay, I'm gonna set up this hitter. They're gonna do their job. They're gonna put it away or get them out of system right back. And it was really fun. It was just a lot of back and forth.
A lot of back and forth indeed. And I mean, to be able to approach your teammates and be like, "Hey, look, I know you want the ball this way, but I physically cannot give it to you in this circumstance. How do you want it differently?" is something that I think all liberos need to work on. in the general sense. So, I mean, obviously you've had so many years of volleyball to do it. Uh, but kind of going off that, to be able to build that connection with your teammates on that communication level, what advice would you give to younger, even older athletes who are still struggling to be that voice on the court, to be able to go up there to the teammates and say, "Hey, I just gave you a decent out of system ball, but I know it can be better. How do you want me to make it better?" Or to your setters, like, "I know my pass was great. It was a three ball, but I can still make it better. Where do you want this ball?" Because I feel like a lot of players I know are very nervous to do that on the court. In practice, a little different, but on the court, not so much in game. So, what advice would you give on opening up yourself to both criticism and giving criticism and not being afraid to give it?
I think everything with that is definitely founded in trust, you know? It's I'm going to come talk to you with very open and honest communication and with the genuinely like best intentions I can. And in turn, I'm trusting that when you're coming to me, you're returning it with the same trust, positivity, and honesty that I would give you, you know? So I think it makes that two-way street a little bit easier because I'm not afraid to be like, hey, can we do this? Or, and then I'm in turn definitely okay with, like, we've had times where our setters have come up to me and they're like, hey, can we try to get this ball more like that? And I'm like, of course, like, say less, I'm there, you know?
No, I definitely get that. I tried to do that here, and then I sent a free ball overpass, but we don't got to talk about that. Um, But you mentioned trust, which is a big thing in this sport. Having trust is probably the number one priority amongst players and coaches. And obviously, from going from 2023 to 2024, earning that full-time starting libero job, your coaches obviously had to have some trust in you. I'd assume. So how did that relationship, especially going from the switching from role to role, because I mean, we can say it's the same all we want, but DS and Libero are two very different positions. You're playing two very different spots of the court. So how how did your trust from your coaches help motivate you to push yourself to get to where you were? And how, in that sense, did they help you develop into the libero you became, this all-American libero? Because I'm sure every libero going into college thinks, oh, I'm going to be a libero, but I'm not going to be this crazy libero, and then they do it. So how did your coaches have a positive impact on you? Because everyone, obviously, especially if you stay 4 years at the same college, the coaches obviously have to have some sort of positive impact on you. So how did that trust from your coaches to give you that spot motivate you, and then how did they keep pushing you?
Yeah, of course. I feel we've had two different sets of coaches. So my first 2 years were were one set of coaches. The last two was a different set. And I would say they both definitely spoke to me with that competitive edge, you know. They were very motivating, very pushing me to be my best, everything like that, you know. And I think I always view it as like when you're DSing, for instance, like of course your role is different. You have more time to also think about, okay, I was just on for 3 rows, like now I'm gonna come off. Maybe me and the coaches will chat some. Maybe those are improvements or things that I'm already doing well. And that's like a big transition from like Libero, where I think the coaches have to trust you because you're not doing that on and off anymore. So whatever it is that you have to say or how you process the game, they have to trust that you're hopefully having the best intentions in mind, clear mind, you know, that you're very focused.
And like you said, you had two different sets of coaches going into your from your sophomore to junior year, which is probably one of the hardest things to do. And it's nothing against any coaches, it's just as a player, you go from one coach to another. It's a very difficult thing to do, whether you do it with ease or don't do it with ease. The initial start is very difficult. But in that transition from your coaches, from Coach Foster to Coach Wood, and what Coach Wood did to develop you as a player, how did she kind of round you guys up and like rally you guys when she first got to that program? Because I feel like one of the hardest things to do as a coach going into a new program that's, been established as this great, great program up to that point, is earning the trust of the players. I mean, obviously you'll have players that trust you right away, but you will also have players that are like, okay, we just got used to this last coach. Now we got to get used to this new coach. So how did she kind of mesh herself into with you guys to continue the great program that St. Olaf has been over the past few seasons?
Yeah, let me think here. So I would say that in Coach Wood's first year, she definitely laid down some new systems, and that involved like a really big new defensive system that a lot of us, it took more time for us all to be able to, I would say, like have that good functionality where it was very smooth, you know? And then the second year, she also brought on our assistant coach, Dylan, and also Coach Dawn. And together, I would say they really put together a really like well thought out, very comprehensive like last year in terms of how we're communicating with each other, how we're deciding to do things, and like what decisions are being made.
I mean, being able to transition coaches like that is very, very smooth. I had to do it in high school. It was not easy, and that's at the high school level. So having to do it at the college level in your transition year from a DS to libero and to be able to mesh that well with a coach is just it's incredible to hear. But I do want to leave you off with one question, and it's kind of like a memorial question. You've had a very long career through obviously like your beginnings of volleyball, club, high school, now, and even beyond that. But looking back on your career, you've done what anyone could wish they could do: All American, All Region, All Conference, the player, Defensive Player of the Year, 2,000 digs, like all this stuff, upsetting a number one ranked team. What who impacted you the most through your volleyball career to help you get through all that? And on top of that, what is your favorite moment from your career that you can look back on and say, like, I might have done all of this in my career, but this is the one moment that will always define me personally as a player? Because I know so many players that have won everything you could possibly want, but they look back on one random moment from middle school volleyball that just sticks with them forever and is their favorite moment. So, what moment is that for you? And on top of that, who's a person that has just been your biggest support system, whether it's your parents, a sibling, like whatever, throughout your entire volleyball career?
Yeah, absolutely. I think my answer is not unique, hopefully, when I do say my parents for being my biggest supporters. I mean, so much of this wouldn't have been possible without their sacrifices. When it's okay, I'm driving and affording club volleyball for my kid on top of like my siblings' athletics, or here I am making this commute over to Olaf however many times a week to go watch my daughter play. And also like the mental toughness they have to have in the sense of, well, I'm always calling them to talk about volleyball and they're always supportive and helping me stay on track, I would say. And then as for my favorite moment, there are so many moments that it's hard to decide, but one thing that will stick with me was our long-awaited win over Gustavus, just because they are such a good competitor and a great team, and they're always really fun to play. And I'm glad that even if it was only once within my college career, I'm very glad to say that we did manage to do that, you know. It was a
I
very exciting.
mean, and you mean you managed to do it while they were ranked. So that's a little bit that's a little cherry on top as well. And I mean, in my personal opinion, as someone who played travel soccer, I did basketball for a few years. Volleyball parents are easily the most supportive. I mean, the story that I hear about all the time, especially in the women's volleyball world, is with Lexi Rodriguez, her parents driving her 4 hours every weekend for club. So it's just something that you as a parent to child, that bond is never going to be broken. Obviously you have the blood bond, the family bond, but to have a parent support you in that sense is absolutely amazing. And I once again want to congratulate you on one of the best libero seasons we've seen in a while and one of the best careers we've seen in a while. I know you're very humble, but you got to give yourself some flowers at some point with all the accolades, all the achievements, and all the things you've accomplished with you and your team in this past year, this past season, and your career as well. But I'd like to thank you so much for coming on, taking out the time out of your day to join this podcast. It's been an absolute honor.
Thank you. I appreciate it. It's always fun getting to talk with someone new.
I love that. Well, have a great day, and thank you so much once again.
You as well.